Hello everyone, welcome to the Just a Brit Abroad podcast, and by everyone I mean the 2 or 3 of you that are watching, the 2 or 3 of you that even know that this show is taking place. If you stumbled across this by accident and you're wondering what's going on, I'm going to try and answer those questions for you in this episode. But thank you for joining me today. It's great to have you along for the journey. My name is Greg. This is the Just a Brit Abroad podcast. As you can tell by the name, it's about a Brit, myself, who is living outside of the UK. I'm currently living over in Sweden, and since I've been here for about a couple of years now, I thought, wouldn't it be cool just to have a format or an outlet where, I could share my experiences, I could engage with you guys that are viewing, we could bring in some guests sometimes, and really just, have a good old discussion about some common interest areas related to lifestyle, culture, travel, those kind of things. But yeah, that's kind of what this is about. It's me, as you can see, and hopefully in the future we'll be bringing in some guests and featured spots from either people that I know in real life, maybe some of you guys as viewers as well, if you want to be involved, telling your stories about living abroad or moving abroad or learning a language or those kind of things. And I think it's going to be fun. So let's see how we go. Thank you for tuning in today. But yeah, here we are. Let's get started. What we're going to do right now is a tag. So I've got a number of questions in front of me on the screen down here. The tag that we're following today is called the Get to Know Me tag, which seems quite fitting for the first episode of my podcast. And I will kind of try and accredit these to the sources that they came from when I do a different tag. But this week's tag is kind of a combination of questions that I found from different sources. So I haven't stolen anyone's format. I hope I'm just, borrowing from people. So thank you if you recognise questions that you created in this list. So the first question for the Get to Know Me tag is, where did you grow up? So as I've already alluded to, I'm from the UK. I'm from the southeast UK in a county called Kent, for those of you familiar with the British Isles. For those of you that have no idea where that is, and you've only heard of Liverpool, Manchester, London, Birmingham, those kind of places, it's about half an hour below London, so right down in the southeast corner of the UK, just the part that has sea on 3 corners, if you're looking me up on Google Maps right now. And something that those of us that are from Kent often say is that we live kind of halfway between London and France, so it is quite common when there's not a pandemic going on that we jump across on the train or on the boat to go across to France for the day and go for lunch or something. So that's a really nice part about living in Kent. And although the UK isn't known for its tropical weather, another running kind of joke or stigma about Kent is that because we're in the southeast, we're closest to the continent of Europe, and therefore we have the most, tropical temperatures, which probably results in, 2 days less of rain a year, so it doesn't really make a lot of difference. But you know what I mean. It's if it's going to be warm in the UK, that's probably the area that's going to happen. So I live on the Sunbelt, you could say, the Florida of the UK. Okay, I definitely shouldn't say that again. And what year were you born? So I was born in 1995. For those of you into your zodiac signs, that is the year of the pig. Which figures actually, because as you're going to get to know over the next few episodes, love to eat, love snacks. It's of course going to feature in this episode. And where do I currently live? I live in Sweden. Good question. I live on the east coast of Sweden, a couple of hours outside of Stockholm. That's all I guess I can say about that. And do I speak any languages, and how well? Well, I speak English, hopefully to a good level. That is my native language, my mother tongue, if you will. But at school, I learned French and Spanish. French, I can't remember barely anything of, so I apologise for that. My French is awful. I cannot even really construct a sentence anymore. Spanish, I learned for only 3 years, but comes back to me a bit more naturally. There's words and phrases that I can pick up, but again, would not claim that I would be able to have a conversation in Spanish. Since I've been living in Sweden, I've been learning Swedish as well, which has been really fun, but of course then has an impact on my ability to remember Spanish words, because we were actually in Spain a couple of summers ago, and as I say, although in the past I would kind of default and remember some of those words, that is not the case anymore. So I'm probably just look like someone that has no idea what they're doing when I go to a Spanish restaurant now, because I just gurgle out some sort of like Swedish mixed with English, mixed with Spanish sentence, which means nothing to them. But yeah, as I say, English and then Swedish, I would probably say. I'm not fluent, but I do talk Swedish, both in my day-to-day life and in my job. And I've actually already uploaded a video about me speaking Swedish, so you can go check that out if you're interested. And what about my favourite Netflix show? That's really difficult. Netflix, even before the pandemic, have been really great about pumping out so much content. Every week you have a new favourite show. But the things that spring to mind as, like long-term favourites, Sex Education, I would really, really recommend. If you've not seen that yet, you need to go and check it out. Bridgerton we watched, really, really enjoyed as well. You is another favourite, I would say. They're kind of the three that come to mind straight away, but I really enjoy the Netflix documentary series, they've just done the one about the Cecil Hotel. There was the one that they did about Tiger King. I love all of it, but yeah, I would probably say Sex Education is my favourite show if I had to choose just one. Really looking forward to the next season. Just wish they would announce the return date already. And what about my favourite artists to stream on Spotify? My number one every year on the Spotify Unwrapped is always Lauv. If you don't know him, you need to go and check him out. Absolutely love his music, have done for a number of years. Been to see him in concert once, actually planned to go a second time, and then this pandemic happened. And then apart from that, other favourite Spotify artists, that's hard. Right now, really loving Bruno Mars. He's been a favourite for a number of years too. And then what about my favourite film? I always find this is a really difficult question. Am I the only one who can never think of a film that's their favourite? If I had to choose one right off the top of my head, I default to when I was a teenager. I really loved the Hunger Games series because I love the books. And unlike, lots of people, I don't look too deep into the detail of, what if they transferred over from the book to the film. Is the film better or worse than the book? I just take the film at face value, and I think they did such a great job with that series. Really gripping, particularly the second film, Catching Fire. I thought that was really, really great. But I just love that series in general, so that would probably be my answer. Have I got any other Hunger Games fans? Let me know down below. And then, have I been to college or university? Yes, I have been to university back in the UK before I moved out to Sweden. And I studied geography, human geography, if you want to be very specific, which lots of people have no idea what that is or what it means. But basically, human geography is, the way that we describe it is, take everything that you think about when you think about geography, scrap it, and then you've got to human geography. So we don't do any of the rocks or the water or the weather or glaciers or any of that stuff. We basically talk about society, civilization, globalization. It's kind of like the crossroads, I would say, between like politics and maybe like sociology and literature studies. Is everything kind of merged into one. I don't know if it really translates very well as a subject in other countries, because here in Sweden, for example, it's not very normal to have a geography program. When I'm telling people at job interviews or friends here what I studied, I usually say like political science or like state science, because that's the closest equivalent. So it'd be interesting to know if you guys also have that study in your country or not. And then, do I have a partner? Yes, I do. I'm not saying anything more about that for now, because that is going to come up again as a topic in a later episode. So yes, I do is all you need to know for now. So that was the tag. I hope you got to know me a little bit better. If there's a tag that you think it would be fun for me to do in the podcast, just let me know down below, and maybe we can do it in a future episode. I thought I would do a section of the podcast dedicated to just listing out some things that we like, dislike, moments that we remember, or places we've been, or things like that. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my favourite Swedish Fika. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Fika is a concept that you really, really need to get familiar with before you come to visit Sweden. And the reason for that is because they are very protective over the concept of Fika, and rightly so. The closest way that I can explain this, and I really hope if there's any Swedes watching that I'm not offending you, it's basically a coffee break that involves some sort of like discussion and communication and like discussion time with other people, and it involves some sort of sweet delicacy usually, and as I say, a coffee. So it's basically coffee time, but you can't say that because it's so much more than that. It's like a way of life here. And in Sweden, Fika time happens at least twice a day. Before lunch, you have a Fika, and after lunch, you have a Fika. So in between the different meals of the day, there is always a Fika. And as I say, it's usually a time, even in the workplace or at school, where people come together and they, just kind of relax, take it easy, talk about something different, and enjoy each other's company and some great treats. And if you live in Sweden or you're going to visit Sweden, it's one of the best things that you've got to look forward to, because who doesn't love the opportunity to sit down and eat some treats twice a day? And some people follow it very religiously, depending on where you are in the country. I thought it'd be fun if I tried to explain what my favourite fikas were, or my favourite sweet fika snacks that you would have. And that's hard in itself, because it feels a little bit like I'm choosing between my children right now, but I'm going to try and give you my top 5 from 5 all the way to number 1 in terms of what my favourite fika are. Let's get into it then, shall we? So my number 5 favourite fika, kanelbulle, which is a cinnamon bun. So Sweden is famous for its cinnamon buns. You know exactly the ones I'm talking about. Not those American equivalents with their icing and their sugar and stuff. We're talking a bun, quite thick and round, and just baked to perfection in the oven. You walk past any shop in Sweden, any coffee shop or things like that, you're bound to see them in the window, along with their equivalent sisters, the cardamom bun. But for me, you think of Sweden, you have to think of cinnamon buns. You have to have them. They're too good to avoid, and there's a really cozy feeling about having a cinnamon bun, so it had to feature on my list. Number 4, I'm going to choose a chokladbolle, is a chocolate ball. You get the oats and you kind of grind them all up together, create like a perfect snowball out of them, and then cover them in like sprinkles or some sort of other equivalent sweet decoration. And then you just bite into them. You hold them as a whole and you just bite away, chunk after chunk. It's one of those things that, again, so super simple, but when you're looking for a simple, quick fika, I would say chokladbolle is where it's at. So that's number 4. Number 3, and this is where it gets tough, because these next 3, I love all of them. It was really difficult to narrow this down to a list, but I'll do my best. Number 3 is the prinsesstårta. If you don't know what prinsesstårta is, it's the cake that's got the green icing on top traditionally. I know there's some of you that may be frantically Googling right now what prinsesstårta is. Translates to princess cake. It was actually called green cake, I believe, for a while originally. But it was the reason it got its name as princess cake, as it translates to in English, is because it was one of the cakes that the royal family used to get baked quite a lot. There were 3 young daughters. They had a teacher. The teacher baked them fika quite often, and one of the princess's favourite cakes was the green cake. So instead of calling it grön tårta, they changed the name to prinsesstårta. Well, that's how that happened. I don't know if the queen or the king said, I hereby decree we're going to call it princess cake from now on, or how that kind of transition actually happened, but that is where the name comes from, that the princess liked it. But yeah, it's basically a layer of icing, a huge layer of like whipped cream, and then like a sponge type cake, all put together in sort of like an archway shape. It looks like I'm just building a house on the screen, but you know what I mean, hopefully. And if you don't, look it up, and if you're in Sweden, make sure you give it a try. Just look out for the one with the green icing. Number 2 has to be kladdkaka. Kladdkaka is, if you translate it, it's sticky cake, I guess you would say. And the closest thing I can say is it's sort of a bit like a mud cake, a bit like a brownie, very gooey, very chocolatey, very rich. And you bake it in like a cake tin, and it comes out kind of, I don't know, like this tall, what's that? Maybe like 15, 20 centimetres, and you just chop out little slices, and you can share it with people. It's great to take to parties, it's great to have at home, very, very easy and simple. It's the kind of fika that anyone can make, but so effective. And I love nothing more than when you go into like a cafe place in town and you want to have some coffee, get a slice of kladdkaka with it, with some whipped cream on the side. It couldn't be better. It's to die for. So that's my number 2, which leaves you all wondering, what could possibly be better than that? Well, the answer is, at this time of year, or actually about a month ago, in Sweden, they have, to mark the start of Lent, a very particular bun, which is called a semla. There isn't really a translation of what that is, but basically it's a cardamom spiced bun. You like hack the top layer off, like a small little circular top layer, and then when you take that little lid off, you fill the top with cream, and then you put the lid back on, and then cover it in icing sugar and things like that. Inside the cardamom bun traditionally is this paste that's called mandelmassa, and it's basically like crushed up almonds. I'm a big almond lover, so I absolutely love semla season, so that is my favourite Swedish fika. If you've been to Sweden, what is your favourite fika? If you're from Sweden, have I missed something? You've got to let me know down below. And then, yeah, make sure to give me your feedback, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit down below. And then where are we ending today? As I say, in the future, I would like to have a guest slot. In the absence of anything like that right now, I'm going to do a story time. So today I'm going to be telling a story time about the time that I got trapped abroad during a global pandemic. If you cast your minds back just about 12 months, so at the start of March last year, I can't remember exactly when the pandemic officially got classed as a pandemic, but it wasn't like a huge deal yet until this particular weekend where the whole of Europe started to shut down. This guy found himself trapped abroad during that instance. And what happened, you're wondering? I'm going to try and answer that for you. And two of my friends and I had met the Christmas just before the pandemic, and we said, wouldn't it be fun if we went on a city break this year? And obviously, completely blindly, unknowingly of what was about to happen in the world, we booked some flights to go to Krakow in Poland. It's one of the biggest cities, and yeah, it's somewhere that none of us have been before. Sounded really nice, lots of history, lots to go and see. A national park just nearby. Sounded amazing, right? Well, it should have been, but the reality was something quite different. Anyway, flew to Poland, landed in Krakow, thought that, I was about to enjoy a nice weekend away with some mates. And then when the door of the plane opens, these stormtroopers board the flight. There's 5 or 6 guys, in, I guess, what you can only describe as like astronaut outfits, or like stormtroopers, or maybe if they did like a fashion line that combined the two. And they wanted to check everybody's temperature. Because obviously one of the early signs of the virus that we were all aware of was that people would get a raging temperature. So they came up and down the plane, checking everyone's temperature with these guns that looked like they'd been taken straight out of Doctor Who, and shone this green light on your head, checked your temperature, and then once you'd been checked, you were allowed to leave. Except this guy wasn't allowed to leave. And I'm sat there in my chair, sweating by this point, because I've got 4 or 5 of these stormtroopers coming up to me one by one trying to check me because no one's getting a reading that they're happy with. I should have known then that it was only going to be downhill from that point. But fortunately, after about the 5th guy checked, they decided, for whatever reason, and I was never told why, but they decided, okay, this guy can go. And they let me off the plane. Breathed a sigh of relief, travelled into central Krakow, met up with my friends. We went to a restaurant, had a really nice meal, sat there with some drinks, having a nice time, really social, really fun. And then we got a BBC News alert come through on one of our phones. The headline reads that Poland is about to shut down its borders, and that border shutdown will come into effect from midnight the very next day. It's now 9-10 o'clock on a Friday night, and they're announcing that the following evening all of the borders, land, rail, flying, all going to be shut down. There aren't actually that many regular flights between Krakow and the region of Sweden that I'm from. They only go a couple of times a week, and the next flight was going to be after this shutdown. So then I thought to myself, so now what do I do? My flight, the flight that I'm booked back on, is after the shutdown. Will it still be allowed to happen? People were swarming on the airport. We saw these pictures on Twitter of the airport concourse just absolutely full of people, which again didn't seem like a great idea because we were the whole point of being chucked out of the country was because of a virus, and now they're all assembling together. Obviously these days someone would have a heart attack if they heard that was going on, because that's definitely not what we want to be doing. But so we decided to stay put, stay in our Airbnb and try and follow the events from afar. So then suddenly it's like, we can't really do anything tonight. We don't know if our flights are still going. We don't know if we have to find another alternative means home. And the next day, we'd actually been booked on this trip to go up into the Polish mountains in the national park that I talked about. So we thought, none of us can fly home tomorrow anyway. There weren't flights to our destinations, or if there were, they didn't have space. So then it was just to go to bed, get up the next morning, jump on our bus and head out into the mountains, which took about 2 hours on a bus. And on the way up, we're sat on our respective phones trying to talk to our airlines, find out what's going on. No one was getting really very far or very many answers. And I remember even by the time we got up to this mountainside town, it was like a whole ghost town. It was dead. There wasn't anybody on the streets. None of the restaurants were open. They wouldn't let people go in to take food. In the end, we managed to negotiate some food from this small little buffet place, but we had to go and eat it outside. And this is like early March in Poland, in the mountains. It was snowing, and we're sat outside, not really with the clothes to be, eating our food outside in the snow, but needs must and all of that. We came home that evening and we began to think about what we were going to do next. But so I remember saying to my friends, maybe that's the way to go. Maybe, these cross-country buses, the Flix buses, for example, of the world, will still be running. So we went onto their website and you could still book to go onto one of these Flix buses. And we thought, great, this is our escape. So I booked, first of all, a bus to Copenhagen, because then I thought from Copenhagen I could then get a train. It's quite easy from there to get to Sweden. It's just across a bridge, no problem. And then my friends did the same back towards London, and we breathed a sigh of relief. All of the signs were that the bus would still be taking place even though the border was shut, so we would still be able to leave the country. So my friends went to bed. Fortunately for me, my girlfriend rang me and we sat there and chatted for a little bit. And once we were off the phone and I was just about to go to sleep, I thought, I'm just going to check the Flixbus Twitter account just to see if there's any update about what's going on, about their services and what they're running or not running. This is like 3 o'clock in the morning by this point. And I look on their Twitter account and someone has asked about our very bus and said like, oh, is this bus still going? And they write back and say, no, our buses are cancelled because of the borders being shut. And then I'm like, okay, well now I can't get out of the country by my plane, which is now by this point been cancelled for the Monday. So this is a Sunday night and the border is now shut officially. We are trapped in the country. My plane back the next day isn't going. Ryanair in the meantime have told me that I should prepare to get accommodation for 2 weeks because they don't think that they'll be doing a rescue flight to Sweden for at least 2 weeks. And this is all beginning to sound a little bit scary. And now our bus is cancelled too. So I go and wake up my friends. I'm like, guys, we need to do something about this. What are we going to do? They don't know yet if their flight is cancelled or not, or if it's going to become a rescue flight. But obviously you can't count on that because at the same time you don't want to then get stuck in the country. And of course back then we all thought we'd just be stuck abroad for maybe 2 or 3 weeks and then all the borders would open again, it would be fine. Now a year later we know that that's not the case and we could have been stuck there for quite a lot longer. We're ringing taxi companies at like 3 a.m. by this point saying, can you get us to the border? People saying, oh, well, we're not doing it or we're already booked up. So then I decide, okay, well, if I can't find a bus outside of the country, maybe I can take a bus inside the country that will get me a little bit closer, because for those of you that don't know the geography of Europe, Poland is here and then you have like a small channel and then it's Sweden just above. So I was thinking if I can get just to the top of Poland, about 10 hours north, maybe I can find, some other way across up there. And then I find out that the ferries between Poland and Sweden are still running, but they are also about to be stopped. If I wanted to make the last ferry that I could get before that border would shut, I had to be in Gdansk in the north of Poland, about 10 hours away, on the same day, about 13 hours from now, and it's a 10-hour bus journey. And by this point I'm panicking because there are trains but you have to change in various places and it just didn't seem very feasible. So what am I going to do? Then I check Flixbus again. There is a bus that is going at 6 o'clock in the morning. By this point it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I haven't slept. There is a bus in 2 hours that will get me up there if there aren't any delays, with about an hour and a half before my ferry. So I say goodbye to my friends, book my third or maybe by this point fourth alternative travel option, run to the bus station, grab like a panini or something on the way from the only open shop I could find and a couple of drinks because I don't know when I'm going to get to stop again. Get on this bus, travel all the way, the whole day it takes me to get all the way through the country. No stops on the way. It was just, they stop, they let people on, change driver and go. And I was ordering food to the bus. Oh, I want a drink, or oh, I want a pizza, or whatever it was. And it was coming to the door, I was picking it up, and then we were travelling on again. And you obviously had to time that perfectly because if the bus had already left, tough luck, goodbye to my food. Long story short, got all the way up to the north to Gdansk. It was like an absolute ghost town. The bus drivers didn't even want to let me on the bus because they could see I was a tourist. And by this point, there's a lot of danger going around about the idea of the pandemic and corona and how it's going to spread. I walked about half of the way, and then by this point, it's getting really dark. It's really cold. I found a bus driver that let me on. I got to the port. I got on my boat and I travelled back to Sweden overnight on an overnight ship. Fortunately, I had taken my work laptop and things with me because I was supposed to be back at work on the Monday. And as I say, it was just a weekend trip. So I could have actually stayed there if I needed to, but I would have obviously had to finance myself. There was no guarantee when I would get the opportunity to travel back again with my airline. So in the end, I was very grateful to get home and then begin my self-quarantine period right here in our sofa over there, working from home for a couple of weeks. And then I remember, for those of you that don't know, Sweden has taken a bit of a different approach to the pandemic to lots of countries. So we've never actually been in like a formal lockdown yet. But we kind of got close at the beginning when every other country was shutting down. It felt like that's what was going to happen here. And so I remember I was at home for 2 weeks. I went back to work for one day once I'd completed my corona quarantine period, and I got to go back to work for one day, and then the very next day they said, okay, it's work from home again now. And I've been at home on and off ever since, and you know the rest. Here we are a year later. That's my story about getting stuck abroad during the pandemic. What did you think? Would you have done something different? Has something similar happened to you? Make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Yeah, so that is the end of this episode then, I guess. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you found it interesting. As I say, the format's going to continue to evolve over time, going to continue to come up with new ideas to share with you. I really want your input too. Let me know down below, where you'll also find in my description my different social media links. It'd be great to have you along for the journey. And as I say, a new episode to follow in 2 weeks' time. All I can say for now is don't forget to subscribe. Put the bell on so that you get notified every time I put out a new episode. But that's it for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you've enjoyed Just a Brit Abroad, episode number 1. Catch you soon. Bye, guys.